Hi, it's Glenn McQueenie, and thanks for joining me today on my 25-minute Success Series podcast. Today, special guest is Jaime Wagg from Keller Williams Referred and Referred Urban, and she is my general manager of operations. And I've got her today as my special guest to talk to you about how to make sure the backstage of your business supports the front stage of your production. So thanks for joining me today, Jaime.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great to have you. And, for those who don't know, Jaime and I have worked together for, I think, about 11 years now and really just enjoy every day. Jaime is super talented in her role, and what she does here is not only run the entire operations, but she's in charge of hiring all of the backstage roles for a brokerage. So just like if you were doing a big play or production, you would have the backstage manager, and they're in charge of hiring the orchestra and the lighting people and the sound people. And I don't even know all the roles, Jaime. I know you come from a theater background. And then on the other side of the business, we have the front stage, which is the client-facing roles, which would be you as an agent, if you had buyer agents, if you had listing specialists, if you had rental specialists. And so today I really wanted to talk about how to really niche out a real estate team, or just niche out the roles that you don't like to do in order for you to stay in your unique ability doing what you love to do every day. Because I find it's not the roles that are fascinating, motivating, that burn agents out. It's them spending so much time in there just doing a lot of like irritating activities, or just okay activities that aren't really getting, to spend all the time with doing offers or getting listings or negotiating offers or removing conditions. So let's turn it over to Jaime. So, Jaime, can you just give our listeners here a little bit of a background of where you came from and what you do now here at this company?
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned theater because my background is actually, if you want to talk backgrounds or, what you really sort of started off going to school for, my background is in theater and performance and production. And what I found I loved the most about theater was the production side. So I guess it's really no surprise that as I found my passion in real estate, not sales, of course, but operations of real estate, that it's very much like producing a show. We have a lot of people involved in both the brokerages and a show. And so for me, my background in real estate has spanned about 21 years. So even while I was doing theater, I was still involved in real estate somehow or working at an office. And I really found similarities between the two. And I think that's probably why I've stayed in real estate for so long, and I still do theater as a hobby. In production with theater, though, it's interesting. If you see a really bad show, there's something that's just not gelling, whether maybe the best talent isn't on stage or the best talent isn't in the back where they're putting all the costumes together, or the lighting is going off the way it should and all that kind of thing. It's the same with a real estate team and same with a real estate brokerage. If you don't have the right people in place, then it's really hard for amazing things to happen. And, amazing, wonderful, super crazy things happen when the right people are in place. And you just feel a momentum that takes you and carries you through all the changes in the market that you experience as an agent when you're out there sort of, getting beat up on the streets every day. And then you can kind of come back to your team for that lift and just to feel better about what you're going through. So I think that's really what I'm passionate about, is team building regardless of what area it's in, and really making sure people are handling the things that they need to handle in order to make a better result for everybody.
Yeah, that's great, Jaime. I find it's almost like there's a concept called 100 units of energy. And it's almost like if you wake up in the morning, you've got 100 units to do all the activities you need to do during the day. And if I have to go and meet a client for a listing, but the CMA wasn't done properly, that's going to waste about 3 or 4 units of my energy. If
Mm.
the car or the traffic is jammed and I'm going to be late for an appointment and I'm fretting, that could be 10 or 15 units of energy. if I get the listing, but we drop the ball on doing feature sheets, I could be losing more units of energy. And I think it's the same with not only for a real estate agent every day, where if they can have everything ready in the background and their backstage is working really well, they can just get on stage and really show up with 100 units of energy instead of showing up with 30, 40, or 50 and feeling tired. Like, and I'm sure you've done productions where or seen a production where you just know something has gone wrong, and the performer is off, whether it could be their mic just went down, or the lights aren't working, or something happened, the show opened late, and all of a sudden they don't show up as their perfect self.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that the same happens in real estate teams, and the same happens, with any team. You've always got to make those adjustments. You have to move forward, and you have to almost raise your energy even more in order to get through it, as you would if you had those 100 units of energy. I think there's a few things that really stand out to me when there are struggles with people and their teams. And I mean, I'd love to go through some of those today, just if we're talking about it, and maybe call some attention to things that people maybe might not know that they're struggling with, or they're doing.
For sure. Well, what if we came up with maybe 10 great things that people can look out for to kind of almost keep their 100 units of energy rocking, which means what are the 10 kind of things that you've discovered in helping build big real estate teams, that if they can just, maybe some of the mistakes that they make and just ways to nail it. So if they were starting and someone's thinking about either hiring their first buyer agent or their first admin person, what are some of the mistakes you see that's kind of losing some of those units of energy?
Well, I think number one is, if we all remember, we are the average of the five people that we spend the most time with, and the five people that we are around the most. So if you're the average, or your business is the average of the five people that you hire, I don't think that anybody can really, waste a hire on someone just for the sake of getting a body in that position to sort of do things that the agent doesn't really want to do anymore, or that they're struggling with. So I think the most important thing that I notice is that, people miss the steps of interviewing. They miss doing every step that's really required to vet the person that they're even considering bringing on the team. And what I mean by that is, a lot of the time I get people who admit, when I teach a class on this or something, that they never check references. And I'm sure, we've all done it. Back in the day, it's just, I need that person and I have to bring that person in. We need a body now. And you think, okay, well, I've learned a lot about this person in this interview and whatnot, and you forget to check the references, or you choose not to check the references. And I will tell you, that's the one most important thing that should be a requirement of your hiring process, is doing reference checks. And then also, if you have a specific role you need them to fill, maybe have them do a test, or an aptitude test, or something that helps you to know, or at least feel a little more confident that you're making the right decision. We wouldn't go to an auto mechanic or a hairdresser or whatever, without getting referrals in a new area from people that we know. So a reference is really that referral. You may have gotten the name of the applicant from someone, but until you actually get the background on that person and how they've done at previous jobs, that's your true referral.
Sure. Like, I find, you know, it's hard to find what you want when you don't know what you're looking for. And I think one of the steps too could be that really make a list of all the activities that these agents love doing in their role, and that gives them lots of energy when they're doing it, and make another list of all the stuff that they just have to kind of do in real estate. And make, the longer that list is, you could almost circle it, call it the job description. Now you know what you want, and then you can start asking around and looking for referrals to try to fill that role. And then when you get those candidates in, as you said, like, um, you know, I think the reason I teach so many courses on hiring people too is because I've just made so many mistakes. Because most most of us as agents just hire when we really need somebody, not when we really want to actually build this big team. It's like, oh my God, I'm so crazy now. I just have to like hire somebody. Someone's got to take for my showings. I'm swamped with listings. So, what would you say to somebody that once they're, do the right interview process, check the um, the references, and then what would you say to them when, like, what's the first day look like for this person, or what would the first 30 days look like?
Well, I think something that comes into play along with the interviewing and making sure you check the references and hitting all of those steps is really to know what your vision is. Because when you're bringing someone else onto a team and you are making sure that, your business is going to run because of you and now this new hire or these new two hires or whatever, you've really got to know what your vision is, because as much as you want to get things off of your plate, it's about creating an opportunity for these people. I often come up against agents that are saying, "Well, I want someone to stay around a long time." And my question back to them is generally, "Well, who is the person that you have to become in order to build the best team and attract the best talent?" Because you can't say, "Well, I just want someone to come and fill all these hours and do these things for me because I need it now." You have to look at this as truly building a business and looking at what your vision is and where you want to be a year or 2 years from now, so that you do bring the right people on. And I know I didn't fully answer your question there, but I think the 30 days that they first spend with you, or even the first 100 days they spend with you, become infinitely easier once you know what that vision is, because you're able to pull pieces of the puzzle together, grab the job description, grab the things you don't like to do, put a training and accountability plan in place. And I think because agents are so used to running, it's the nature of the business to do that. I think because they're so used to running around and meeting people on their terms, it's it's forgotten that there's an investment of time in the people that you're bringing onto your team.
Totally. And I think that's why, especially this time of year, in the busy part of the market is when we get lots of calls from people who are, hey, listen, who do you know who can come join my team? And I always say to them, like, listen, like, I'm telling you right now, when you hire somebody, your production drops a little bit. And if you're in, this is really when all the agents have to make most of their money for the year. This is like the worst time for them to go and take away from the revenue producing activities right now and go back into, a skill set they don't usually have right now. And they will really, I think, resent that, oh my God, I got to go and train this person, and they're not up to speed as much. And I guess what I would add to that too, and I know, hopefully you'll agree with this, is don't hire your clone, hire your complement.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. A lot of people hire who they like because they're familiar and they know, oh, we'll get along. And getting along isn't always having the best working relationship. I believe that if you bring complementary talents to the table, then there's a respect that builds and a respect that develops between the two of you, so that it's possible to get along in spite of the things that you may not agree on. But as you're moving the business forward, that's something normal to happen. So you are really looking for a partner versus looking for a friend. And a lot of agents sometimes, fall into that trap of, oh, this person is awesome. And, 10 days, 20 days, 30 days later, it's not working out. And so I think that just goes back to putting all the steps in place and really taking stock of hiring before the need arises, and putting some time into this. You put time into CMAs, you put time into listing presentations, you put time into showing buyers homes and things like that, so that they get the best result. I think you have to look at the same thing when you're hiring and when you're bringing people onto your team. It's an investment of time, and you're going to have to bring that person on and spend some time with them in order to get the best result.
Oh, totally. And I, if most agents think back, like how long did it take them to master their sales right now? For many of them, it's like they had to fail their way forward. They had to make mistakes, but now they're really, really good. They're into high production, and they've really kind of mastered the sales side of the business. But now there's some new skills that are required, and that's the next level, which is mastering the hiring side.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, and I think more importantly, and I think the reason most teams don't stay together is usually because they haven't mastered the leadership side. That they're so used to just acting as rugged individuals, lone wolves. It's quicker to do it if I just do it myself. They don't even know how their operating system works a lot of times. They just know they get up every morning and run full out. Is just to recognize that it takes time to get a great person. And so, I guess one of my key points here would be don't hire right now in a busy season. Get all your money together. And now, as we go into the slower seasons, into the summers, where you really have like 30, 60, 90 days to train somebody up before we come into the next big selling season, it would probably be the better advice because they're going to need some time for them to gain mastery in what you want them to do.
Absolutely. And I think to your point, I mean, we've talked about, missing all the steps of interviewing, no clear vision, hiring at the wrong time. If we were to move to kind of point 4 and 5 almost, the number of hours that someone works doesn't matter. What really matters is the focused hours with the right people in the right role. And the interesting thing to me is that oftentimes when a hire is made, this is sort of maybe point, 5 or 6 even here, is that it goes from an I business where the agent's doing everything, like you said, to almost a they business right away. And it's sort of like, oh gosh, I have someone now. This is amazing. And they just shove everything off to that person. And there's a really important middle part that's missed there, which helps to develop the relationship, but it also helps the leadership to grow in the agent or the person that's bringing this person onto the team. And that's the we section. And that's when you work together in a lot of different aspects of the business so that when it's finally time to just let that person fly, it's their thing. They own it, and you can feel confident that they understand what you will need from them in order for this to move forward and to build a bigger, better supported business. Because as soon as you start bringing agents on, they're going to need things from that person as well, and that person needs to be able to handle it and understand how to do that. And I think that the lead agent and the person that's owning the business is the best person to teach them that.
Yeah, it's kind of like teaching someone how to bake a cake, right? You say, okay, watch me bake a cake. And then you could leave the room and go, now you go bake a cake. Or you could just take that middle step that says, why don't we just bake a cake together? You know?
Mhm.
Well, I'll see what you're doing. I'll monitor what you're doing. Oh, yeah, maybe that's too much flour. Maybe that's, oh, okay, do this. Here's a better shortcut. And it's just that really great time, as you mentioned, of just being the we business is really where people, they'll make their mistakes, but you're working with them, you're correcting them quicker, and they're getting their mastery a lot faster than just really dumping and saying, okay, good, now you take over all of this, where they might not even have a clear vision of what you really want to get done.
Absolutely.
And what about the expectations? Like I always really believe that maybe number 6 would be something like, you should be inspecting what you expect them to do. So what are your thoughts about that?
My thoughts are that that's a great accountability tool, and once a group starts to work together, that's often the thing that falls off or falls by the wayside. I think it's probably because they've missed the we part of the communication and of the training that the agent's not even sure what to really inspect. The agent doesn't really know, how to do it or what to do, but there's some really great tools out there. And I know at the brokerage we use things like the 135 and the 411, excuse me, to really make sure that people are staying on track for their goals. And it's not just a to-do list. It's a must-do list, but it's also an opportunity for you to have a really quick connection. It doesn't take much time out of your day at all, just to go over the things that are high priority. And if they're high priority, they're must-dos, and if you get them done, then everybody's moving forward with a lot of momentum. If you don't get them done, then you start to have that conversation around, okay, what's going on, and why isn't this being done, and is this the right hire? And you start to get all this fear in your world. But I think with a simple accountability step or two each week or every other week, it's really important to make sure that everybody's on the same path and that everybody's reaching or attaining the same goal.
Because if not, they'll give you your job back, right? So, for those listening, they probably, they're like, okay, what is a 411 and what is a 135? So, in 30 seconds or less, how would you explain those two One's a vision tool, and the other is more of an accountability tool.
Yeah, sure. Well, the vision tool being the 135, the 1 stands for one big goal. And then the 3 stands for 3 strategies that you're going to name to attain that goal. And then the 5 is 5 tasks underneath each of the strategies to be able to make sure that those strategies are getting completed and they're in place to then be able to lift up to the big goal and have that achieved. And you can really use that tool with any big project that you have, a year-long vision, perhaps, if you have something like that going on. It's really kind of interchangeable with some of the goals that you have going on. The 411 is more of a regular accountability tool, which allows the individual to write down what their goals are. So the 4 would stand for 4 weeks, the 1 is 1 month, and then the other 1 is 1 year. So if you look at your year and you look at the goals that you want to hit by the end of the year, you would then break them down into monthly goals and break them down into weekly goals so that they're easier to attain. It's almost breaking stuff down to the ridiculous in a way, so that you're looking at your week going, okay, these are the 6 things that I must do in and amongst all my regular daily work. And as long as I hit those 6 things, this week is going to be awesome. And then I'm going to move on to next week, and we're just going to hit all of our goals like clockwork, and everything's going to naturally feed up to, by the end of the year, us achieving great success with what we're doing. And I think to your point about giving the job back, this is probably one of those things to add to the 10 that a lot of agents will take the job back. And I've seen agents say, "Oh, okay, you don't know how to do this yet. I'll just do it. It's fine. Don't worry about it." Where I would much rather see an agent say, "Okay, if you knew what to do, what would you tell me to do with this? Or what do you think the first 2 steps of this might be? And then we can reconvene and talk about it afterward," in order to give that person or empower that person to be able to start thinking for themselves and figuring things out themselves.
Mm. And I will just, I'm going to go back one step to maybe number 7, those 2 tools we talked about, and then number 8, what you just mentioned. But I think for those people listening, like the 135 to me would be almost, you could think about it this weekend if you were planning on going away. So I'm going to go on a week's vacation, you know? And then what are the 3 things I need to do? Well, I need to schedule the time, I need to set my budget, and I need to go and search for a place to go. And if you can find the place to go, set your budget and set the time off, if you do those 3 things, then you're going to go on a vacation. And then the 5 strategies are below is like go online, search prices, book flights, you know, in each one of those categories. And what I love about the 411 is for most people, if they were thinking, okay, I want to lose 20 pounds next year, well, that's my 1-year goal. And then so monthly, that would be 1.6 pounds a month or zero point 0.4 pounds every quarter. And if they could just meet their quarterly goals, they would hit their monthly goals, and then the end result would be their annual goals. And we love doing that when we're working with agents and we're like, okay, what's your GCI goal? Let's break it down to the month. Now, what do you need to do? And I think it's so important that people understand that there's just like, there are some pretty simple tools that people have lived before you. And if you're going to be building like real estate teams, you know, there's a lot of kind of like shortcuts and hacks. I'm going to jump ahead to number 9, Jamie, because I think this might be one of the most important ones, is hire someone to do a specific role that when they're doing it, they love to do it. They're fascinated and motivated by it. They're self-managed, and they just kind of love what they do. A lot of agents make the decision to bring on a buyer agent, but it's really a buyer agent who becomes maybe their assistant sometimes. Also, you know, they come to the open houses with them. They also run out and put the lock boxes on, fill up the feature sheets. You know, that's the kind of losing formula, because you're really hiring a generalist. And what I've noticed, even not only doing the book, The McQueenie Method, but these podcasts, is the riches are in the niches. And if you can just find the best buyer agent, and that best buyer agent should be someone who you're booking the buyer appointments for, they just take the person out and they sell them the home, and then they move on to the next. They actually don't go out and start lead generating. They don't even take the transaction to closing. You have other people to do it. And I think the more, and the future of real estate teams is super niche roles on each team. And I think also at a broader level, it's you could find someone who, if you wanted to build an investor division, just go recruit a buyer agent who just loves to work with investors. And your job as running the team is to do the seminars, get the people into the seminars, and then just pass on the booked appointments to that person.
Absolutely, and I think what you just talked about there, or you were describing, is you're describing talent. A lot of people building teams try to find that person that can kind of like take whatever away from them. But talent is a motivated person who is a perfect match for the job, like you said, and it's a next logical step in their career path. And when you have a perfect match for the job, you've got someone who has the knowledge, the skills, the track record, and personality to get the job done. And then you just want to make sure they're a cultural fit with your organization or your business. And once that's all together and working, it's really magical what can happen. And a lot of agents, I think, don't take the time to look for talent. They kind of just put the people in place and then find themselves rehiring and rehiring and rehiring. There are some agents out there who absolutely spend the time to look for it, and I've seen wonderful things happen. But if there's a caution that I could give most agents who are looking to build that team, is really take the time to look for talent, which is almost, hiring ahead of the need, and sort of bringing it back to that vision piece.
Sure. I could agree more. I think a lot of agents will also hire to their capacity lid too. You know,
Hmm.
if they're a 10, they can hire tens. If they're a 5 or a 6, which means they haven't got their inner game or their business together or their emotional intelligence together, it's really hard. Someone who's completely confident in who they are and what they do won't feel threatened by bringing talent onto their team. And if you're not that way, then you'll tend to bring people lower than you onto the team. And then you just start, like, you almost play the game of numbers. If you're an 8 and you hire a 4, if you add them up, that's a 12 out of 20. Now your team's operating at, 12 out of 20, which is 60% capacity. And if you bring on another 4, then you're going to be at 16 out of 30, which means you're now at 50% capacity. Meanwhile, if you're a 9 or a 10 and you bring another 10 on, or 9, you can always be operating at like 85, 90% of key capacity. So let us just wrap up, because I want to leave with one thought, and then I'm going to ask your insights on it. And I know these are 25-minute calls, and we're at 29 minutes, but we'll be done in a minute. Um, I think we need to reverse engineer building teams. Instead of thinking, oh, I need a buyer agent. I think people have to go bigger and go, you know what? What I really want is a big life. In order for me to have a big life, I'm going to have to probably create a big team to support that big life. And that big team is going to require me to invest some time on creating a really, like, hiring talent and mastering how I do it. But it all starts at the very beginning with what their vision is. Not short term to hire somebody in a week or two to get them out of this mess, but more of a longer term vision. So, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I agree, and there's a term that we use at the office, and it's called empire building. And if we can build a team when we find talent of empire builders, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're just going to sit there and, build business for you, though that should be their goal, because if everybody's working to build their empire, then that naturally comes back to the individual that's on the team as well. So I think you're right. I think we need to start with the big vision, and we need to figure out what that big life is, and what we really really want out of the next few years of our business. And things can change on a dime, and I think it's really important to have that vision so that people will align themselves with you, and people will see why it's important to do the work in order to get to that goal.
Mhm. And I think the game is to build wealth for your empire, right? Like, your whole goal should be to make that buyer agent as wealthy as possible, and in return, they'll make you wealthy, or make your executive assistant and create as many opportunities for that executive assistant that they basically would die for you, and they would just all they care about is trying to make, like, because they realize how that your focus is on making their life better. They'll focus all their energy on making your life better all the time. And I think, to me, that's really what recruiting, hiring, and selecting great empire builders is all about.
Definitely. I think it just goes back, who is the person that I must become to build the best team and attract the best talent? And once we know that, the sky's the limit.
Well, I'm going to call those famous last words, Jamie. So thank you so much. I totally appreciate your insight. I'm sure people listening are going to get a lot out of this. Um, if the people listening want to get a copy of the 411 or the 135, they can just I guess email me directly at glenn@glennmcqueenie.com, and we're happy to send it out to you. So thank you so much, Jamie. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Had fun.
Okay, bye.
Bye.